Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in.
She has a wonderful personality. She really does.
You are listening to Talking with Gloria.
Let's take a walk on the wild side.
With your host, Gloria Ponziano.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Talking with Gloria. I'm your host, Gloria Ponziano, and as you see, there's nobody in the studio with me today. Today is off the cuff. This is the first time that I've ever done off the cuff, and what it is, if you're tuning in for the first time, is that it's sort of like a contest, and I put it out there and let my listeners send me topics that I find fascinating or interesting or something that I want to talk about or learn about. And whoever comes up with the best topic, I choose them just at random. And today, joining me from Las Vegas is Hunter Damaris. Hi, Hunter.
Hey, Gloria. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. And you won the basically the coin toss for today's topic. But before we get into your topic that you want to talk to me about, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we're listening to Talking with Gloria on the Talk Network. And you can also reach me and contact me at gloria@talkingwithgloria.com. If you haven't checked out my website, please do so. Join me on Facebook. And also this coming weekend on the 19th, I'll be speaking in Sarasota, Florida, called Tapping Your Inner Power. So for those of you that are in the Sarasota area and would like to join in on this or join in on the next time that I'm going to be doing a topic, please contact me and we'll see if there's any more room. I think there's one seat left maybe, but we'll see, so that's what's going on this week on Talking with Gloria. Tomorrow night, you definitely want to tune in as well. 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be having Australian author Michael Rhodes. And I have to say that he is one of my top 5 authors that I just absolutely love. When I was on WTMY down in Sarasota, I had him on 2 years ago, maybe back in 2010. And I rarely get to a place where I'm speechless, but I could listen to this man teach and talk all day long. So if you have nothing going on tomorrow night at 6:30 to 7:30, tune in to talkingwithgloria.com and definitely check out this Michael Rhodes I don't even know what he's going to talk to us about, but I can promise you this, you will be amazed. He has such wisdom. He has such, I don't know. You just have to almost experience Michael Rhodes. And so I'm so very excited that he's granting us an interview. And what's really cool about it, it's going to be Wednesday night here in the States, but it'll be Thursday morning in Australia. So we're very honored to have Michael joining us tomorrow night on Talking with Gloria. Okay, Hunter, you still with me?
I'm here.
Okay. So tell me, what do you want to talk to Gloria about?
Well, the subject I came up with, someone, being a life and business coach was this, what the heck? We survived December 21st. Now what? What do we do now? The planet didn't blow up.
We survived. Yeah. Now, before we get into the topic of you saying, the 21st, tell our listeners what you do for a living.
I'm a master life coach, strategist. I've been working over 30 years as an entrepreneur and also doing this kind of work where I get really, really deep into what works and doesn't work for an individual or an organization. And I help them come up with new and creative ways on how to move that organization or themselves ahead. And what's been compounding everything, I think, is all of this for the last 15 years building up to what was going to happen on December 21st.
Did you really buy into any of that?
Do I what?
I said, did you really buy into any of the end of the world, the Mayan calendar? Did you believe it?
I researched it enough to know what the Mayan calendar really said, and then it was the American media and movies that were making it end of days strategy out of it. That was the unfortunate part. This was more about their history, and it actually ties into a lot of other cultures. They all have kind of the same conversation, but I thought it was just Joe the calendar maker got tired at the end of when he was chiseling away for decades, and he just said, "Okay, I'm done now." But no, I didn't buy into
I
the
ran
end
out
of
of
the world
ink.
strategy.
Oh my God.
And no, I have no time today. But I think what it did give us is, and this is part of the Mayan philosophy, many others, is I think we all have to admit, especially about the last 15 or 20 years, things have been getting a little strange around here on the planet and in our country. And we need to do things differently. And that's, I think, is the real wake-up call. It gives us an opportunity to go, okay, well, what do we do now? What can we do different that hasn't been working for so long? I mean, the economy you can go right down the list of what's not working.
Right. Now,
And
what would
it needs to be fixed.
what would you think, like with don't you think though that, I mean, I never bought into the end of the world and end of days, and, it didn't matter to me if the Mayan calendar has been very, very accurate with some of the planetary things. I mean, I've watched enough of the History Channel and done enough research on my own to know that you have to admit it's very, very interesting that they could be so accurate without any kind of computers or things like that. So I'm not going to argue or dispute that. I just didn't believe in the end of days thing. I do think that they were a very advanced civilization. And here's where I'd like to get your input. What do you think about not just the Mayans, but civilizations that are so highly advanced? Are they ETs? Are they extraterrestrials? Do they come from another planet? For example, with the pyramids, for many, many, many years, it left scientists scratching their heads. How could it have been done? And they would try to duplicate. It just couldn't be done. So there's so many mysteries out there. What do you think about it? I mean, do you think that they attained their knowledge from ETs?
Well, I wish I had the time machine to go back and find out for sure, because there's several different theories. I mean, you can define an extraterrestrial as an alien like we see in, the little gray people running around with big eyes. They could look like us. They could have been higher consciousness beings. I mean, it could be, from one of many different possibilities. And I don't know which it is. They got their information from somewhere. Things that I've studied over the decades, like the ancient Hindus. Now, the Vedas is like almost 10,000 years old. That's their book about everything, practically. And how that was supposed to have been given was that these meditation masters of the time, and these rishis, they meditated for weeks on end, and they just downloaded the information almost like a computer. So, I mean, in the Vedas, it has everything from how you live your life in a way that makes your life work, to society, to predictions, it's an incredible.
There's a lot of things.
Volumes and volumes.
There's a lot of things that we just simply cannot understand or explain. How people get the kind of knowledge and the understanding that they do. I mean, even some of the people like Da Vinci and Edison and things that men and women that contributed to our society in some amazing way that were so far advanced. So it always lends the question, where does this kind of knowledge and information come from? It's like the question that people like to raise a lot about reincarnation. Do you believe in reincarnation or not? And right now, for those of you that are tuning in and listening, we have no idea whether or not you can call in as a caller once we have somebody on the line. So if you want to call in to the studio, I'd love to have you do so. The number is on your screen. You can try and call in and join into this conversation. We just don't know if once we have Hunter on the line if there are any more lines available. So if you want to join into this conversation, I'd love to hear from you. Now, Hunter, going back to what I was originally going to ask, how do you think that I mean, don't you think that there needs to be some kind of a shift? That's probably one thing that I do see in my lifetime is this major spiritual shift, not just in consciousness, but in uh, people are experiencing the same kinds of things. Like we're suddenly aware of time speeding up, and science tells us that time literally is speeding up. So, how do you? What are your thoughts on some kind of a pole shift or some type of a physical shift or an emotional or spiritual shift within us? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a really good question. And I use this partially when I'm now, more recently in the last few years, when I am coaching people. There is something going on. And I think, I mean, I can get into a lot of the esoteric stuff and try to avoid that a little bit, but I think we have an opportunity as a society, meaning the whole planet right now, to take a quantum shift. And I think that's part of the pressure that's been people have been feeling. You know, it's, I mean, all the obvious stuff. There is let's say an energy that's come through. Could be an energy, it's everybody's collective consciousness. I mean, we can call it 1,000 different names, but what I think is happening is there's an opportunity right now. I mean, people are breaking down, and I'm working with clients that they're just crying.
Right.
They're going, I can't live this way anymore, and they're living good lives. The ones that are living good lives sometimes. It's not just the people that are under the pressure.
Right.
The economy was caused by a conglomeration of us as consumers, the individual American, all the way up through the government and corporations. Everything was like a perfect storm, and again, the list goes on and on. So I think there is like what you call it, almost like, you know, like you put a sand in an oyster, right, and it turns into a pearl.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got hit with a giant piece of sand. I guess that's about the best analogy I could give. And when we say spiritual shift, I think it doesn't. So for some people, that could be kind of hard to grasp and understand.
I don't.
Meaning they have their own beliefs, and their own beliefs. They have their own way of seeing and thinking things, and that I don't want to be stepping on anybody's belief system. But if nothing else, I'd like to take it pragmatic. We've got to stop doing almost everything that we've been doing, whether it's how we deal with our environment, how we deal with our economy, how we deal with our personal life and business, in order for us to create a world that's going to be prosperous, healthy, and for everybody.
Well, I think what you're saying is that, you know, people need to just start thinking about their fellow man. I don't know. I know when I was growing up, and I know I'm dating myself, and I don't really care about that. But, you know, when I was growing up, you really did care about your neighbors. We played on a street, a dirt road, actually, where there was just a bunch of, you know, box houses. And that was our neighborhood, if you want to call it that. And everybody watched out for everybody else. And if I was 4 or 5 houses down and I was acting up and I was being smart or I was picking on a kid, the mother of the kid could come out and spank me. And that was okay with my mom and vice versa.
Yep.
So it was more of I hate to use this term, but it was more of a tribal feel. That we're all part of the same tribe. And I really do believe that mankind is like that. I mean, when you stop to think, I remember listening to Wayne Dyer one time say this many years ago, that if you stop to realize that, and I'm probably going to get the history timeline screwed up here, but just as an example, you know, when we fought Nazi Germany, all of a sudden we were told as Americans that German people were our enemies. And okay, so they became our enemies. And then, you know, that was resolved. World War II was resolved. And then you got the Japanese. And now the Japanese are our enemies. And so we hated all the Japanese. And then after that, then there was the Vietnamese, you know, and now the Vietnamese people are our enemies, and we're supposed to hate the Vietnamese. And so we do. And then that war is over with, and the Vietnamese people are okay now, you know. And so now it's Afghans or it's Iraqis. And so my point is in that society tells us a lot. They influence a lot of our psyche as far as hate and love and who is our enemy, who is our friend. And I think it's a perfect metaphor for the 23rd Psalm that says that we're like sheep, because sheep actually are some of the stupidest animals in all livestock. We as humans are very much like sheep. We have a herd instinct. I mean, all you have to do is yell fire in a building and everybody takes off running. They don't even stop to check to see if there's a fire. That's a herd instinct.
Right.
Okay. And then they like to have a leader, and they will follow the leader even if the leader falls right off a cliff. And that's happened. Any shepherd will tell you that's happened. And they get themselves into jams and they will walk right into, briar brush and get all tangled. And, if the shepherd's not there to pull them out, then they're stuck. They'll lay down, and if they have a full stomach and they lay down and their weight begins to shift, they can't get back up on their feet. That happens to us as human beings a lot. We get our bellies full of stuff when we're so busy accumulating all of our junk and all of our stuff in our lives that it bogs us down and we can't get back up on our feet. And we're like, oh my God, we go into a panic. Sheep do the exact same thing. So I don't think it's a coincidence or just, I don't think David was just saying, who can I write about? I'll just write about sheep, even though he was a shepherd. I love that psalm because I see the similarities in human nature. So I see the metaphors, I see the connection, I see what a perfect analogy it is of human nature. We are taught all these things. And so sheep they want a leader. And even if that leader leads them off of a cliff, they'll go off a cliff.
Yep.
That's a stupid animal.
It's like being the lemons, and the lemons that run off the cliffs in Britain every year.
The lemons? I don't know about that.
Lemmings, they're little rodents.
Oh, okay.
Same thing, but I call it, this whole big. You're really dealing with a very huge picture, and what you said I agree with completely. I termed this in a workshop I did many years ago, called it societal burnout. We went through the 50s, we went through the 60s, and most of the 70s, and that was a very intense time. Yes, I'm dating myself. And it went from overall, I think the average family I grew up, I don't think we quite hit middle class. We lived in Newark, New Jersey as a little kid. Same thing with the neighborhood, like you were talking about. If I mouthed off or did something that adult up the street said not to do, and I came home crying. Now, my dad and mom were protective of me. If somebody just did something like that, there would be trouble. But if they say, well, what the first thing out of their mouth is why did Mr. Jones hit you in the head? Well, nothing. And they're going, you're right. Then I had to be accountable. And I was like, oh, you threw a rock at the house. Well, good. Now here, bang. And I think we went from a society overall, it didn't matter what your class was, it didn't matter your ethnicity, that people were generally more accountable, generally more proactive, even though that word wasn't in our overall vocabulary back then. We were more self-reliant and took responsibility for things, whether it was the bus driver to anybody. And
nowadays you can't sneeze. You can't go get a cup of coffee and have that coffee burn. You spill the coffee on yourself without somebody turning around and suing. I mean, we all know about the woman who had the lawsuit, for against McDonald's,
yeah.
and see, that is a perfect example of just something grossly wrong in our society when that's acceptable. Okay, this woman made the error. And, I'm just using that as an example, but she made the mistake, but everybody in society had to pay for it. Certainly in America's society, and people go, oh, no, Gloria, we didn't pay for that. Yes, we did in our insurance premiums. I mean, really, whenever there's any kind of lawsuit or things like that, even gosh, when when you have a hurricane on, here in Florida or on the coast, and let's just say that it was Katrina, and people go, oh, that's really a shame. It's terrible what happened to Louisiana. No, it's terrible what happened to the United States, because what happens in Louisiana affects all of us in the United States. Louisiana cannot absorb the cost of that loss. So we all get a chunk of it. We all get a piece of it. Our premiums go up, everybody's go up. So and this is a perfect example of what affects one affects us all. So what goes on there happens, we all feel it. The fires out in Colorado, we all have to help pay for that. The things that go on in the state of Florida, the things that go on up in Illinois, the things that go up on the East Coast when the East Coast was hammered with a hurricane. They're still dealing with that. We as a nation, we're still dealing with that, even though it might be out of our mind right now. And it's out of our mind because the next big hot news topic, and I'm not going to bring up some of the terrible, painful ones that have recently been brought to our consciousness. But these kinds of things, when it hits the news, we forget about what went on the East Coast. We forget about the devastation. We forget about the tornadoes last year that just wiped out Missouri. We forget about Katrina. These things are still going on. So, okay, as a nation, as a society, what do we do? And I think that I taught this a long time ago. I want to say maybe 2 years ago, and it's on my YouTube channel, and it's called Shaking the Tree. Are you a fat orange? No, that's what it's called. Are you a fat orange? And it's what I felt very, very prophetically, if you want to say that, or I felt it in the spirit. And this was, like I said, at least 2, maybe 3 years ago. And the metaphor that came to me was that there was going to be a great shaking of the tree, and the fat oranges, and I guess because I'm in Florida, maybe that's why that came to me, but, seeing all these orange trees, and the big, fat, juicy ones are the ones that get really, really heavy and pull down the limb, and they eventually break off. And all you have to do is go up and shake a tree a little bit, and these great, big, fat, juicy oranges fall from the tree. And what that said to me was that if we do not stay connected to source, we do not stay connected to God, to source, to, a lot of people call that a higher intelligence. If we don't stay connected to that and keep our inner voice tuned in to that frequency and realize that we are not separate from our fellow man, that we are all part of the human race. If we're not willing to reach out and help our fellow man, we're going to be falling from the tree, and woe to those who fall. And those who fall are the ones that you were just talking about a few moments ago when you were saying that people, they think it's the economy, and they feel like I can't take any more. And there's so many people that are feeling this kind of pressure. Don't you see that in your life coaching? People just crumbling under the pressures?
Absolutely. And this is the thing that makes it very difficult when I work with people and for some others, is I agree with what you're saying, is people have to get back to that connection, that source, nature.
Mm-hmm.
You want to really get connected real quick, just go spend an hour in a park.
Right,
the problem that I've seen again and again and again, and this is, we're going to have to take this back to the individual level. Before people can reconnect with that source, they have to recognize how hypnotized they are. Don Miguel Ruiz, you were talking about the sheep as an example, but Don Miguel Ruiz, he wrote the Four Agreements. He calls it domestication. And our society is becoming more and more like accelerated domestication, probably since the 80s. Political correctness, individual greed, trying to make everything equal for everybody. Johnny gets a trophy because he just showed up to practice and never played the game.
Right. He doesn't have to earn it.
I was on champion. Huh?
He doesn't have to earn it. He just has to show up.
He doesn't have to earn it. Right. And if Johnny doesn't want to participate in gym, he doesn't have to anymore. I mean, and all these things, it's not about rights. See, we went through this phase of everybody's supposed to be equal, everybody's supposed to have rights, everybody's supposed to do this, and, and it goes on and on. Political correctness is one of the worst things that's ever happened overall. But people don't recognize, and you see this, you're on Facebook a lot, I'm on Facebook a lot, there are all these people posting all these positive things, and you got to be this way, and you got to do this. And I've spoken to a lot of those people, and it's like they're a train wreck. They don't even try to practice this stuff. And you can't, for us to fundamentally shift, which I agree with what you're talking about, to get back to God, so to speak, get back to nature, get back to the things that are important, people have to really, really look in the mirror and go, wow, look how much I'm not connected. You can't say anything to someone without being considered a mean person if they're not being accountable. Whether you're going for getting a coffee that the person stares at you and doesn't take your order right 3 times and you get a little upset. Oh, you're the mean person. You're the wrong person. I've seen it in public where 4 or 5 people will stand up and defend the server when the server was wrong. It's like, you just go get the order right.
Wow.
But it's from things that simple, and it expands from there. The housing bubble. The biggest cause of the housing problem was not the greed of the Wall Street people or the greed of corporate America. It was the individual consumer trying to become a multimillionaire buying their home and buying kamikaze loans. I spent a lot of years in real estate. I still am a consultant in real estate. And I used to own lots of real estate many years ago. I know a lot about that business. Mortgage is everything. And if people are trying to get rich on their home, which was never the idea, and they get loans that they don't understand, nobody forced anybody to get these loans.
Well, I am
so we have
quite
to
sure
take this
that
personal responsibility to take those steps and be accountable. Now, I know some people that have called me up, when the bubble started to crash, go, Hunter, I know you have some background in this. Is there something I can do to fix it? It's my fault, but can you help? Now they're taking responsibility. They're trying to figure out how they can make this work and negotiate with their lender. But most people are saying the government's got to fix it. And again, all of these things all are just symptoms of what you were saying before. Of it's not even having any leaders anymore. Of sheep taking them off the edge. It's I want this, I want that, I want this. Do you agree with me?
A sense of entitlement. A sense of entitlement.
Entitlement, yes. Yeah. We
Now,
grew up in an era when you had to earn stuff. Rich people, even that I knew, many rich people that I've worked with, had to earn it.
well, I mean, shouldn't we? I mean, you should earn it. I mean, this is America. This is where you get to.
I agree.
But the sense of entitlement that's going on right now, that, there's a whole generation that's coming up right now that, I don't understand some of the things that's going on. I have my own opinions on those things, but as a talk show host, I just like to bring these topics to the forefront. When it comes to me speaking, I'm speaking some things that are things that I've actually experienced in my life. So I try to always share from personal experience. But when I'm on a show, I just like to poke and prod at people just to find out where they're coming from, bring some information, find out, what people are, where their mindset is. One of the things that I do want to touch on, though, is when you were talking about political correctness, do you sense or do you feel certainly that people are afraid to say the word God? That it's, I think
people are afraid to open their mouth about almost everything.
Good point.
And God is one of them. I'll confess, I've been a spiritualist my whole life. I was never raised in any religion.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been, I've studied esoteric philosophy. I've been in Eastern thought. I teach meditation. And when I first started learning that, they kept saying, I got it to the G word. It was like that's the best I could do. But then they gave me new words: universal mind, source. I think God, for a lot of people, carries a bad connotation.
And why do you think that is? Wait a minute. Let's stop there. Why do you think that is?
Sure. Well, I think, first of all, there's a big part of our society that is not religious.
So God automatically makes a person religious?
I think that's the mindset we'll
Okay.
coach with people. I've actually coached people that are not just spiritualists. I've dealt with, I've actually coached Orthodox Jewish people. I have coached very conservative Christians. So I try to find a vocabulary that works. Because
Right.
sometimes they'll say something, and I'm a pretty good poker face, but sometimes I'll wince because it's like that's not my belief system. And they'll go, "What's the matter?" And I'll go, "I have a little problem with that. Let's figure out another way to talk about it." And they'll go, "Okay." Most of the time I'm working, because it's like most of the time, at least I've been fortunate with the clients anyway, not a lot of the people I've met in public per se, that because they're striving to do something better, they know that I have something to give them, and they have something that they can donate to me, even though they're my client. So we're trying to find common ground. But the G word is like, and it's just like everything else, because you look at all the debate over the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance didn't have God in it up until one point.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that's part of the problem now. God, the word God has now been used as a rallying cry for a certain group of people that a lot of people don't agree with.
I just don't. What I don't
think that's part of the
understand.
problem too.
I don't understand why our country was founded on certain principles, uh, certain constitutional rights that we have, and like you said, the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer and all these kind of things. That people are so offended by it. And at first it was, well, you can't take prayer out of school. They may take it out. They may keep our kids from actually literally standing up and saying a prayer or sitting down and saying a prayer, but you really can't take prayer out of anything. I can be praying right now as I'm talking to you.
Right.
That's just a matter of formality, I think. But, what's interesting is the mindset of people. Why, what's happening in this country that this is becoming such an issue, like over Christmas? There were lawsuits in different towns and counties for the manger scene to be taken down. And, just what is happening, in your opinion, to this nation as far as there's God and Jesus and baby Jesus and the manger scene and prayer in school and all of these things have become so offensive to people. Why do you think that is?
I think, okay, well, in my observation, not my opinion, and in seeing all of this is just one of the many, many, many symptoms. I call it, it's a virus, and there's all different facets of political correctness. And it's like, because we don't want to, as an overall society, from the individual to the family to the neighborhood all the way up, nobody wants to deal with the real issues. Personal accountability. If you really cared, if you were really a person that was striving to make your life better as best as you know how, these will not be issues. What happens is people that want to try to, either from a bigger perspective, try to create distraction or make themselves self-important. This conversation, I grew up in a mixed neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey. There's people that had Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas in the same window.
Mm-hmm.
Other people just had Merry Christmas. And nobody cared.
And nobody cared. Yeah.
Nobody cared. To what's happened is, and this is where I have people who look at me and they'll stare at me, and many times they'll walk away when I say these things, but this is the truth. The truth is most of the individuals, unfortunately, in our country have either forgotten, got buried, or don't care to take responsibility for the things that are important. We have a political train wreck. We have a social train wreck. We have
an economic train wreck.
Pick any aspect of society and a culture, and it's not just here. We're kind of ahead of the game right now, unfortunately. But instead of going, does it really matter to me whether they put a manger up or not in front of, I believe in separation of church and state. From the Constitution, I believe that. I don't think it should be overly done in government buildings. Okay? That's just me. But if you want to put up stuff in front of your business, in front of your house that has a manger.
But where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? I remember when my oldest daughter was in high school, she had to read what I thought was a very, very offensive history book, a history story, and do a report on Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and it was about his sex life. And I was so offended by it that I went to
How
the
old was
school.
she?
She was in high school. And I want to
See,
say she
that
was
to me, that material that's kind of stupid to have it in high school.
that kind of material was
that
in
level.
her high school. And I went to the school and I said, she will not participate. You give her an F. You know, she will not participate in this. But I didn't bring a lawsuit against it. Now, the reason that I brought that up is because, one, I didn't think that was appropriate information that my high schooler needed to know about Adolf Hitler's sex life. I don't know what that has to do with history. Now, if she were in college and when she was studying psych, and she was studying the psychology of criminals and so on and so forth, or dictators, then yeah, I could see where that would maybe be, you know, a topic that she would need to review, but not in high school. I don't see what. So, in that.
Okay, but let's use you as an example. Okay, you went in there, you found it as an individual thing that was offensive.
Mm-hmm.
You have a minor. You
Mm-hmm.
made your point. Whatever it came from it, the conversation was over. What happens with most people, they either it's usually falls into just a couple different categories. Either there's this self-righteous indignation that a lot of people run off of today. It's like, and because we've gone through 25 years of pretty much it's an extra payday if you even threaten a lawsuit, because everybody's so afraid of fighting back from the other side. And so they're either afraid of getting sued, they don't want the bad publicity. So somebody will, or then sometimes there's people that are just idiots, like let's say at your school, if they got really ugly towards you or something like that, where they may have instigated that problem, but they probably, but now it's like, and here's another example, and I know I'm bouncing a little bit, but forgive me. I've had several situations where people have come to me, or I've heard of both. Mr. and Mr. Jones live next door to each other. Mr. Jones's tree, the branches are growing over into Mr. Jones's yard. Now, by law in most states, that's a version of encroachment. I can ask Mr. Jones, please, can you cut those branches back to your property line? Please do that. And if not, then you just send a letter and say, look, if you don't do it in 30 days, I'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it used to be most of the time. You didn't even send a letter. You want to know, Joe, can we do something about the branches? He goes, I don't have a saw or anything. He says, I'll tell you what, you buy the beer, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't even talk to your neighbors if you're lucky.
Right.
Very seldom anymore. And you get a letter from their attorney. If you don't have this done within such a period of time, we're going to sue your, blank blank.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Mr. Jones will either do one of two things. He'll either get really ticked and come pound on your door. Most of the time, it doesn't happen all the time, or have stick his attorney on you. So there's dislike, hate, and then somebody's tree gets destroyed.
Right.
For no reason other than the two of us could have got together on a Sunday afternoon, barbecued a couple burgers, had some beers, and cut the branches down. This is how far isolated we've become and separated from each other and our own self. You talked about source. Not only are we separated from source, God, whatever the right thing is, we're completely, in Vegas, I've heard professional architects talk about this, the way they've set up most of the communities during the boom. You don't see people out on the streets in most communities. There's not really any neighborhoods except for the older neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. People lock themselves up in their houses. You don't see kids out playing, very seldom, and it's like they don't even know who their neighbors are.
Well, we're in a whole new world. Kids don't, Hunter, hold on. Kids don't go outside, and if I were a parent today and I had small kids, I'm not so sure I'd let my kids play outside either. We've seen too many and heard too many kids being abducted and snatched right out of their backyards. And it's a new world, and it's not just a new world, but to me it's a dying old world. I think that what's happening across the board, I don't care what country you're in, there's such fear and there's such violence and there's such anger within the hearts of people that all you had to do was just stand back and be an observer on your Facebook or on your Twitter account or something during the debates during the presidential election, and you saw such. See, that was absolutely shocking to me, and I don't really shocked that easily, but I was absolutely stunned at some of the people that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, to see the kind of venom that was coming out during the presidential election. And I'm not here to debate. I mean, to me, that dog doesn't hunt anymore. I mean, we have a new president. The president we have is the one that we're going to have for the next 4 years, and so we may as well do the best that we can with it. But the point I'm trying to make is the venom, the anger, the hatred
Right.
that, and if you even thought about making a comment that was opposite or contrary to a popular opinion, oh my gosh, the venom
Mhm.
and the nastiness. And see, we're seeing the same thing come out as a result of the gun issue, the Constitution, the
Right.
Second Amendment, and we're seeing the same thing. And it's gotten to the point where I'm
Right.
like, my gosh, I mean, I thought once the debates were over, because I was so on top of the debates, I was watching, I never missed a debate. And I, obviously I'm a very proud patriot. I love my country. I've left it. I've gone to other countries, and I know what a very, very blessed land we live in. And I love her,
Mhm.
and I want to protect her, and I want the best for my country. The things that I'm seeing that's taken place in this country that is just absolutely mind-boggling is, it seems to me that there's more. People just have to have something to fight about, and using the gun. And I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but using the Second Amendment right, I believe that all Americans, have a right to bear arms. Now, I know that there are a lot of people that are just going to go ballistic over that. I believe in the Constitution, period. I believe that we have this right. I believe that we have a right to free speech. I mean,
Mhm.
would there be that kind of, craziness, if we were taking away, trying to alter any of our other constitutional rights? And people say, well, yeah, but that's different. This is children. This is guns. This is, and then there was the debate about, well, is it mental illness that we're not addressing? Is it guns that we're addressing or not addressing enough? I, as an American citizen, I do believe, and I've said this. I have friends that can testify to this. I have said numerous times since the theater shooting in Colorado, and I don't like to mention names of the people, but ever since the theater shooting, I said, wait a minute, how did this man get this kind of ammunition, this kind of these kinds of guns and equipment and all the equipment that he had, and that did not put up a red flag? How is that possible? Now,
Right.
like I said, and I grew up in a family that believes in having guns and going hunting and so on and so forth, and all my relatives hunt, and it's a family thing. But if somebody said to me, well, we're gonna put tighter restrictions on that, and we're gonna red flag a certain amount if buying a certain amount of ammunition or a certain type of gun, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I think most Americans probably feel the same way. When I go to the airport and they say, well, you need to get there 2 hours ahead of time because we have to search you, and we have to have time to search everybody. And so you got to get there 2 hours. Is it inconvenient? Yep. But it makes me feel safe knowing that they're
Mhm.
doing their job and that they are, frisking people down and checking it as best as they can. Why? They're doing that to protect Americans. They're doing that to protect us. And we don't even question that anymore. And so I think that there needs to be restrictions on, I think something has to change to where there has to be red flags that go up where certain things are investigated, and I think we're going to see that happen. But to take away a constitutional right, I don't know. That that's going to be a really, really hot topic, and it still is. What's your
Oh,
thought on that?
and I believe it always will be. I want to go touch on something you said a few minutes back about fear. We've been taught to be afraid in our society, especially, again, I think the cutoff point, I think there was an interesting demarcation of what's happened in our country and the world from 1980 back in 1980 forward. 1980 forward, I mean, look what's been in our conversation over and over and over again. We have the video games, violent movies. I mean, and people are, watch this again and again and again. Don't trust your neighbor kind of a thing went from being common sense logic to meaning, well, you tell your kids don't take candy from strangers, which is a smart thing, to there's got to be something wrong with your neighbor. And we used to use this in workshops a lot. Fear as an acronym is false experiences appearing real. Most fear is still a false experience appearing real, but it's become so endemic in our society. Whether it's we're all going to get sick and die from this virus, or we're going to, don't let your kids play and get stuffed up. In fact, that was a funny thing happened to me one time about a year ago. I was walking in one of our shopping centers here. It's an outdoor center, shopping center. Young mother's walking with her 5-year-old son. It's 105 out, and he's running down the walkway, and he's out in the sun. She goes, "Honey, don't do that. You're going to get cancer." I almost wanted to so badly to grab the kid, throw him into the tree well, scrape him around on the rocks a little bit, and hand him back and say, now he's going to grow up to be a little boy. I mean, it's like 2 generations of this. You got to wash your hands with, antibacterial soap 4 times. I mean, and the fear factor at every possible level. See, and now
our
we're turning it on
media
ourselves.
plays into that
what happened
too.
was
Hunter, wait.
Say again?
I said our media plays into that, though. I mean, we've discussed this certainly on my show before that you cannot sit down and watch a television show where the commercials are not talking about, the flu. Oh my gosh, I counted them the other night. What was I watching? That award show. Is it People's Choice or I don't know, whatever award show was on the other night, and I was counting the number of times that they were talking about the flu. I'm like, oh my gosh, could you pound that in to the American heads anymore? That everybody's getting the flu. I mean, even during the award show, well, Meryl Streep's not here because she's got the flu, and this person's not here because they've got the flu, and this winner just admit that she's got the flu, and so you've got all of that going around, and we don't realize how susceptible our spirits are to the things that we say and the things that we expose ourselves to. And people ask when the Secret came out, I believe it was The Secret. Wait a minute, I'm being told that I got 2 minutes, but unless this clock is wrong in here, I've got about 10. Will. I'm trying to find out what's going on here. I've got 10 minutes at least here. Okay, what was I just saying? Oh, we were talking about
your Secret.
Yeah, I believe when The Secret came out, a friend of mine called me. I was out of town on vacation, and she was my realtor, and she said, "I want you to watch this." And after I did, she says, "Is it really that simple? That all you have to do is make a vision board, and you just have to focus on it?" And I said, well, let me say it this way. It's simple, but it's not easy. And that's a really good explanation. It's simple in the fact that the steps are simple. I mean, you don't have to have a degree to learn how to manifest things in your life. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to. So it's simple in that way. But is it easy? No, because if it were easy, everybody would be manifesting everything that they said. I mean, the minute you said, "Oh my God, I laughed so hard I thought I would die," boom, you drop dead. Well, it's not that easy. But it's simple. It's simple. It's a simple thing to learn, but it's not an easy thing to do.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think this is a perfect example of how to tie some of this what we've been talking about together. The Secret really was a plagiarization of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, who wrote about all this stuff in the 1920s and 1930s.
Mm-hmm. Who got it from the Bible?
Steps are
Who got it from the Bible in
the steps.
Genesis 1, that everything produces after its own kind. So go ahead.
Mhm. So he took, but what happened is, the human potential movement, the human growth movement, all of this stuff made it sound like all you had to do was do your vision board and say, every day I'm going to be happy, healthy, rich, whatever it was you wanted to do. And somehow it was going to show up. That's what I call spiritual political correctness. Nobody bothered telling you, and the teachers like Ernest Holmes and Napoleon Hill and people that were from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s were saying, you got to work. And what happened is everybody just expects, okay, I'm praying for it, so therefore it must be. And this is another big problem that's in our society that has created the entitlement. You got entitlement that came from different places, and this is one of them. I've got my vision board, I'm doing my stuff, and everything is great. I'm just going to go out and run things up on my credit cards because that means I'm prosperous. And these are just many of the layers that have caused us to go to where we are now. And then people then they say, well, this stuff doesn't work. This spiritual stuff doesn't work. These prayers don't work, or whatever it is. Therefore, religion, spirituality, positive thinking, whatever it is a fallacy. Most people don't want to work anymore. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, used to say, treat and move your feet. And that in religious science, that's their form of prayer. So you still got to go out and do stuff. You still got to be in action.
Mm-hmm.
You still got to, and that's part of this unalignment that we have. It used to be people realizes if I want to get from point A to point B, whatever how big that distance is, you got to kind of line everything up, whether that's your actions, your prayers, your visualizations, what you speak about. Now people are on one side gossiping and backstabbing their best friends while they're at the same time going to their service club meeting, telling everybody how wonderful they are, and then they go back out into the business world, and they really don't, they get upset when they're called out by their employer because they're texting and using their personal emails at work, and they're only putting in 6 hours for an 8-hour day they're getting paid for, and you're the bad guy.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of... you do have to, there has to be some type of a spiritual checklist that you do on yourself. And I do believe, sorry, I've got a frog in my throat.
Okay.
I do believe that I believe that we can manifest things. I truly believe that. I've done it in the positive and in the negative. And I believe that we have the power and the ability to do that. In fact, that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about this weekend at Tapping into Your Inner Power. And I believe that so much, though, of why we're not seeing manifestations is because we're still in an attitude of well, why don't you have a job, or why aren't you prospering financially? Well, it's the economy's fault. Or it's, I lost my job and they're downsizing. It's always somebody else. Is it possible that you manifested and created this into your life yourself? Well, no, I would never do anything like that. I would never create poverty or lack. I did. That was the hardest thing for me to realize, that if I wanted to see manifestation of positive things in my life, I had to be accountable and responsible for the things that I manifested in my life that were negative, things that I really didn't want. How did I get them? I dwelled on them. I thought about them. I thought about them often enough to certainly plant seeds in my psyche and manifest these things. But we say, no, I don't want to be responsible for that. And we are. You can't be a co-creator. You can't manifest things in your life if you don't examine the entire, like you said, the full body alignment, the body, the mind, the spirit. You can take care of the spirit, and then you neglect the body. And you don't get outside. You don't let it breathe air. You don't exercise. You don't engage with people. Engaging with people, the computer.
In itself.
The computer is a wonderful thing, and I'm so grateful that we have the computer, because we can communicate with people around the world. There's so many things that we can do with technology. I'm so grateful for it. But it also causes such a disconnect among people. I know people that I swear they want to do all of their communication through texting. And
Mhm.
I am not alone in that. I mean, a lot of people know exactly what I'm talking about. We have
I think the statistic now is it's the largest. It's the largest volume form of communication there is now. Not even talking on the cell phone is texting.
yeah, texting. And I mean, how easy is it for you to screw up a conversation? You're in a jovial mood, and I like sarcasm. I like sarcastic humor. I always have. I don't know if that's growing up with brothers or what, but I just find it George Carlin, that type of human. I just find that kind
Sure.
of humor. That's what I like. And you can't. How do you do that and text? Well, you can say something, but then the person on the other end is offended by it, or they use that as a way of not communicating. And that I like I said, I see such a disconnect in our society from people
Yes.
that I think we're creating, like you said, this term is probably overused, but we are creating the perfect storm, and we're
Yep.
disconnecting from people that we need to be connected to. So when I know that I was corresponding with somebody on my Facebook, and I asked this person if they had somebody that they could reach out to because they were in trouble, and
Mhm.
they said no, and I was shocked, and I said, any family or friends or no, they didn't have any, and
Mhm.
I was really stunned because the person had been living in this place for a very, very long time, for several years, and yet they didn't have enough friends to reach out to. And we're seeing that across the board. We're seeing people that are disconnecting because the computer, they literally live their lives and their friendships. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a good thing. I have some wonderful friends. In fact, you and I were connected through Facebook. We've never met.
Right.
And
Right.
I am so excited because of using social media as a way of advertising, tapping into your inner power that I'm going to be doing this weekend. That's going to be a lot of people that I've never met, but I've met them through social media. So there's good and then there's the bad. It's great that you can do that, but it should never ever take the place of actual physical interaction. Don't you agree?
I agree completely, and that's where one of the things that
We got 3 minutes, by the way.
show how where our society went. That we have so many people, and a large percentage of people that are disconnected and communicate that way when they're sitting in the same room. I've seen people actually talk to each other when they're in the same room using their texts on
Yeah.
their phones as if speaking to one another, and it's not rare. And you use the word inner power, like for that new workshop, which I'm excited about for you, by the way.
Thank you.
We This is a new conversation. A lot of people give lip service to it. I'm not talking about you, but lip service to it. But we're so outer projected that they don't know what inner power is. I believe that our parents, though they didn't know anywhere near as much about many things that we do today, no matter what they're right, wrong. I mean, they weren't perfect, but they probably had more interpersonal power than we most people in our society do today.
Hmm.
It's like self-reliance. We got to get it done.
Right.
What is it? Whatever it is. Got to
Right.
paint the garage. Okay, let's get it done.
Hmm.
To really serious problems. And I'm going to close with this. See, we didn't change our paradigm as a society. We learned how to hate the Russians and the communists during the Cold War. That was our big focus, even though it was maybe in the back of our minds as kids. And all of a sudden, how dare they? Communism fell apart.
Hmm.
We had nobody to focus on as the bad guys anymore. For the
Okay.
most part, communism is gone the way we knew it.
30
We
seconds.
turned it on ourselves. We turned it on ourselves, basically, and we have to stop doing that. We have to start creating a new vision for the country, for our individual selves, and work together in a different way
Well,
than we
you
have been
made a
before.
very good point, and I'll wrap it up with this. I think if more of us, if we would just focus on ourselves, and we would focus on how I can improve myself, how I can improve my attitude. You see, we can't control the people around us. There are going to be people around you, even your own family, who don't understand you, who don't want to love you, or they don't want to support you, or they think you're way out there in left field, or whatever. These will be your family members. These will be your coworkers. These will be your neighbors. These may be your spouses, maybe, or whatever. You cannot change them. That's their issue. All you can do is be who you are. You've got to be authentic. You've got to be real. And you've got to say, okay, there's nothing I can do about that. But, and you can't let their toxic energy pull you down and ruin your life. And I see I hear from people every single day where that's happening. And so we're going to wrap this up. We're out of time. You have been listening to Talking with Gloria. Hunter, thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow night when I have Michael Rhodes on, the author from Australia. It's going to be, I promise you, it is going to be phenomenal. You do not want to miss tomorrow night at 6:30 Eastern Time. Tune in right here on Talking with Gloria. You've been listening to Talking with Gloria on the Talkwad Network. Make sure you contact me at my website, talkingwithgloria.com. You guys have a great day. Hunter, again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye now. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in.
She has a wonderful personality. She really does.
You are listening to Talking with Gloria.
Let's take a walk on the wild side.
With your host, Gloria Ponziano.